The block universe. Is the future already there? Imagine that somewhere, somehow, your 10th birthday still exists. Not as a memory, not as a photograph, not as information stored inside your brain, but as an actual place in space-time. The room is still there. The people are still there. The candles are still burning. You are still leaning toward the cake. Now imagine that your final day also exists. Not because someone has predicted it, not because fate has been written by a supernatural hand, but because, according to one interpretation of modern physics, the distinction between past, present, and future may not be built into the universe at all. The universe may not be something that unfolds. It may be something that simply is. This idea is often called the block universe. And if it is even approximately correct, then our ordinary understanding of time may be one of the deepest illusions created by human experience. We normally picture reality as a moving present. The past is gone. The future does not yet exist. Only this moment is real. Then this moment disappears and is replaced by another, and another, and another. It feels so obvious that we rarely question it. But physics has given us reasons to question exactly that picture. To understand why, we have to begin with something that sounds simple. What does it mean for two things to happen at the same time? Suppose you are standing on a train platform. Two lightning bolts strike the railway tracks, one far to your left and one far to your right. Light from both flashes reaches you at exactly the same moment. You conclude that the strikes happen simultaneously. At the same time, however, someone is riding past you on a high-speed train. The train passenger is moving toward one lightning strike and away from the other. Because light always travels at the same speed for every observer, the passenger cannot simply say that they moved into one beam of light faster than the other. Instead, the physics works out differently. From the passenger's frame of reference, the two lightning strikes did not happen at the same time. One happened before the other. This is one of the consequences of Einstein's special theory of relativity. And it leads to a very strange conclusion. There is no universal cosmic now. There is no single moment that the entire universe agrees is the present. That statement is more radical than it first appears. Before relativity, it was natural to imagine the universe as a giant stage. Space was the stage itself. Time was a universal clock hanging above it. Everything in the universe moved through space while sharing the same cosmic time. Newtonian physics worked extremely well with this picture. You could imagine asking, at least in principle, what the entire universe looked like at exactly 3 p.m. There would be one correct answer. Einstein changed that. In relativity, space and time are not completely separate things. They are woven together into what physicists call space-time. An event is not fully described by saying where it happened. You must also say when. So instead of describing reality using 3 dimensions of space, we describe events using 4 coordinates, 3 spatial coordinates, and 1 time coordinate. You can think of an event as an address in space-time, not just where, but where and when. Your birth is an event in space-time. The moment you started watching this video is another. The formation of the Earth is another. The first sunrise 1 billion years from now, assuming the Earth still exists to see it, would be another. From this perspective, time begins to look less like a mysterious river and more like another dimension in the geometry of the universe. This does not mean time is identical to space. There are important differences. We can move freely in different spatial directions in a way that we cannot apparently move freely through time. But mathematically, Relativity treats space and time as parts of one larger structure. That structure is called space-time, and the block universe is one way of interpreting what that structure means. Imagine a map. A road map contains many different towns. You may currently be standing in Raleigh, North Carolina. That does not mean Atlanta has ceased to exist, because it lies behind you on your journey. Nor does Nashville fail to exist simply because you have not reached it yet. All of those locations are represented on the map simultaneously. Your location changes. The map does not need to create new cities as you approach them. Now replace geographical location with time. In the block universe, events in the past and events in the future are somewhat like different locations on a map. The fact that you are experiencing one moment does not necessarily mean the other moments do not exist. They may simply be elsewhere in space-time. You are 5 years old at one location in space-time. You are watching this at another. You may be 80 years old at another. All of those events could belong to one four-dimensional structure. Your life would then resemble a long path running through space-time. Physicists call the path of an object through space-time its world line. A parked car has a world line. A planet has a world line. A photon has a world line. You have one too. If we could somehow look at your entire existence from outside ordinary human experience, we might not see a person appearing moment by moment. We might see the complete shape of your life, stretched across space-time. Infancy at one end, old age at another. Every conversation, every decision, every quiet afternoon, somewhere in between. This sounds strange, because consciousness does not experience life that way. We experience one moment at a time. We remember the past, but not the future. We seem to move through time in one direction. That creates the sensation that time itself is moving. But there is an important question hiding inside that sentence. What would it even mean for time to move? Movement is normally defined as a change in position over time. A car moves because its position changes as time passes. But if time itself moves, what does it move relative to? Would we need another kind of time outside ordinary time to measure the movement of time? And if that second time moves, would we need a third? This is one reason some philosophers and physicists are suspicious of the idea that time literally flows. Perhaps nothing called time is flowing. Perhaps physical events are simply arranged in temporal relationships. Earlier than, later than, before, after, cause, effect. The feeling of flow might come from us. This idea becomes easier to visualize with a film reel. Imagine an old strip of movie film stretched across a table. Every frame of the movie already exists on the strip. The beginning is there. The middle is there. The final scene is there. If you project the film through a machine, however, the audience sees only one frame at a time. The characters inside the movie, if they were conscious, might experience one event after another. They might say that the past has vanished and the future has not happened yet. But someone holding the entire film reel would see that every frame is part of the same object. The block universe is sometimes described in a similar way. Space-time would be the entire film. Our conscious experience would be something like the projection. That analogy is useful, but it has a limitation. A film reel exists in another dimension outside the movie. The block universe does not necessarily require some external observer watching space-time from beyond the universe. There may be no cosmic projection booth. There may only be the space-time structure itself. Another useful analogy is a book. When you read a novel, you experience page 1 before page 2. The characters do not know what happens on page 300, but page 300 already exists inside the physical book. The reader's position changes. The The pages do not come into existence as the reader reaches them. Again, the block universe suggests something similar could be true of time. But there is a dangerous temptation here. People often hear this idea and immediately say, then everything is predetermined. My choices do not matter. The future is fixed. Why do anything? That conclusion does not automatically follow. The block universe is a claim about the existence of events in space-time. It is not necessarily a claim about the mechanism that causes those events. Your choices can still be part of the structure. Suppose tomorrow you decide to call an old friend. In a block universe, there may be a space-time event corresponding to that phone call. But the phone call can still happen because you decided to make it. The existence of the event does not remove the decision from the causal chain. Your deliberation is also an event. Your uncertainty is an event. Your reasons are events. Your final choice is an event. The block universe does not necessarily say that you are a puppet. It says that whatever choices you actually make belong to space-time. Whether genuine free will exists is a separate philosophical problem. Some people believe the block universe supports determinism. Others think the two questions should be kept distinct. Physics also adds another complication. Quantum mechanics does not describe the world in the simple clockwork way classical physics once seemed to. Depending on how quantum mechanics is interpreted, some events may not be predetermined in the ordinary sense. Quantum theory appears to involve probabilities, and different interpretations disagree about what those probabilities mean. So even if space-time has a block-like structure, the deeper story of why particular events occur remains unsettled. The block universe should therefore not be confused with an all-knowing cosmic script. It is better understood as a particular way of thinking about the geometry of space-time. There's another word often associated with this idea: eternalism. Eternalism is the philosophical position that past, present, and future events are all equally real. Its main competitor is called presentism. Presentism says that only the present exists. The past existed but no longer does. The future will exist, but does not yet. Presentism feels extremely natural. When someone dies, we say that person no longer exists. When a child has not yet been born, we say the child does not exist yet. Everyday language is deeply presentist. But relativity creates problems for a universal version of presentism. If only the present is real, we have to ask, who's present? Observers moving relative to one another can disagree about whether distant events are simultaneous. One observer's now may include an event that another observer considers to be in the past or future. This is called the relativity of simultaneity. And it removes the simple idea of the universe being divided into one objective past, one objective present, and one objective future. Imagine two observers passing each other in space. Because they are moving differently, each has a different plane of simultaneity. That means each observer slices space-time into now in a slightly different way. At ordinary human speeds, the difference is tiny. We do not notice it, but the principle remains. At extremely high speeds or enormous distances, the differences become significant. There is no universal line marking the present across the cosmos. That is one of the strongest motivations for the block universe interpretation. Instead of asking the universe to choose one special present, we treat the entire space-time structure as real. Different observers simply slice that structure differently. There is another consequence of relativity that pushes us in this direction. Time itself passes at different rates depending on motion and gravity. This is called time dilation. A clock moving extremely fast relative to you will tick more slowly from your perspective. A clock deeper in a gravitational field will also tick at a different rate from one farther away. This is not merely theoretical. Time dilation has been measured experimentally. It even has to be accounted for in technology such as GPS satellites. So there is no single master clock driving the entire universe forward. Different paths through space-time accumulate different amounts of elapsed time. This idea is sometimes summarized using the concept of proper time. Proper time is the time measured by a clock traveling along a particular path through space-time. Your watch measures time along your world line. Another observer following a different world line can measure a different amount of elapsed time between events. This means the universe does not contain one universal age ticking identically everywhere. And once again, the simple image of reality marching forward under a single cosmic clock becomes difficult to maintain. But if time does not objectively flow, why does it feel as though it does? Why do we remember yesterday, but not tomorrow? Why can we influence the future, but not the past? Why does a broken glass remain broken instead of jumping from the floor and reassembling itself? This is where the arrow of time enters the story. Many fundamental equations in physics work almost equally well, whether time is considered forward or backward. But our everyday world clearly has a preferred direction. Eggs scramble. They do not spontaneously unscramble. Smoke spreads through a room. It does not normally gather itself back into a cigarette. Coffee cools. It does not usually extract heat from the surrounding room and become hotter all by itself. The direction behind much of this behavior is related to entropy. Entropy is often loosely described as disorder, although the real concept is more precise. It concerns the number of microscopic arrangements compatible with a larger physical state. Systems tend to move from less probable, highly ordered conditions toward more probable states. This gives us a thermodynamic arrow of time. The early universe appears to have existed in an extraordinarily low entropy condition. Since then, entropy has generally increased. That difference between low entropy and high entropy gives physical history a direction. Memory may depend on this arrow. Brains create records of earlier states. Photographs record earlier light. Fossils record earlier organisms. Cratered surfaces record earlier impacts. The universe contains traces of what we call the past. We do not find comparable records of what we call the future. So perhaps our psychological experience of time is linked to the thermodynamic structure of the universe. We remember in one direction because physical processes that create memories operate in one direction. From inside the block, that direction feels like becoming. That still leaves the mystery of consciousness. Why do you experience this moment? Why this page of the book? Why this frame of the film? This question is sometimes called the problem of the moving present. If all moments exist, what makes one of them feel special? The block universe itself does not fully answer that. One possibility is that there is no objectively special present. There is only the local perspective of a conscious system. Every conscious version of you at every point along your world line experiences its own moment as now. The 10-year-old you experienced that birthday as now. You experience this moment as now. An 80-year-old version of you, if that event occurs, would experience that moment as now. From within each moment, the present feels unique. From the perspective of the entire space-time structure, there may be no universal present at all. This leads to an unsettling thought. Maybe now is not a property of the universe. Maybe it is a property of perspective. Consider the word here. There is no universal place called here. Where is here? It depends on who is speaking. If you are in New York is here. If someone is standing on Mars, Mars is here for them. Here is an indexical term. Its meaning depends on the observer's location. Some philosophers suggest that now may work similarly. There is no universal now. There is only the moment occupied by the observer using the word. That does not make the present unreal. Your location is real, even though it is not the center of the universe. Likewise, your present can be real without being the universe's unique present. The emotional consequences of this idea can be surprisingly powerful. If the past still exists somewhere in space-time, then moments we normally call lost might not be annihilated in the absolute sense. A childhood afternoon, a conversation with someone who has died, a day that seemed ordinary at the time. Within the block universe picture, those events are not necessarily erased. They occupy their positions in space-time permanently. That does not mean we can return to them. It does not mean we can communicate with them. It does not prove that consciousness continues there in some mystical way. Physics does not give us permission to turn the block universe into an afterlife theory. But it does challenge the intuitive idea that the past is simply nothing. The past may be inaccessible rather than non-existent. Likewise, the future may be inaccessible without being unreal. That is an important distinction. Imagine standing on a mountain road. A town behind the mountain is hidden from you. You cannot see it. You cannot interact with it yet. But lack of access does not imply lack of existence. The block universe asks whether the future could be hidden from us in a somewhat analogous way. Not because mountains block our view, but because our physical and cognitive structure only allows access to local events along our world lines. Again, this does not mean the future can be known. Relativity does not give us a way to look ahead in ordinary circumstances. Causality still matters. Information cannot simply travel backward from arbitrary future events and tell you what will happen. The future remains practically unknown, even if eternalism is correct. There are also important objections to the block universe. Some philosophers argue that relativity does not force eternalism. Physics provides mathematical relationships between events, but metaphysical conclusions about what exists may go beyond what experiments directly tell us. Others propose alternatives. One is called the growing block universe. In this picture, the past and present exist, but the future does not. Reality grows as new events come into being. Think of space-time as a block that is constantly adding new slices at one edge. The past remains real. The future remains open. Another approach attempts to preserve some form of objective present while accepting relativity. These ideas face technical and philosophical challenges, but they remind us that the interpretation is not settled simply by writing down Einstein's equations. Physics tells us how space-time behaves. Philosophy asks what that behavior means about reality. The distinction matters. There is also general relativity, Einstein's theory of gravity. In general relativity, space-time is not a rigid background. Matter and energy curve space-time. That curvature is what we experience as gravity. Massive objects such as stars and planets distort the geometry around them. Black holes distort it dramatically. The universe itself evolves geometrically. Yet general relativity still describes reality using a four-dimensional space-time. Entire cosmological histories can be represented as complete space-time geometries. From this mathematical perspective, the universe can again appear less like something being continuously created and more like a complete geometric object. Physicists sometimes call this a four-dimensionalist view. Reality is not just three-dimensional space changing with time. Reality is four-dimensional space-time. A human being in this picture is not merely a three-dimensional body moving through time. You are a four-dimensional object extended across time, the child you were, and the adult you are temporal parts of the same larger entity. Just as your left hand and right hand exist at different locations in space, different stages of your life exist at different locations in space-time. That idea sounds almost absurd from everyday experience, but our everyday experience evolved for survival. We are extremely good at navigating distances of a few feet, predicting the movement of animals, reading facial expressions, and remembering where we left the car keys. We did not evolve to intuitively understand four-dimensional space-time. A fish does not need general relativity to avoid a predator. A primate does not need quantum field theory to find food. Human intuition is powerful, but it is local. The universe has repeatedly turned out to be stranger than our instincts suggest. The Earth feels stationary. It is moving. The ground feels flat. The planet is round. Objects seem solid. They are mostly empty space organized by quantum fields and electromagnetic forces. Time feels universal. Relativity says it is not. So when the block universe feels impossible, that reaction tells us something important. It tells us that the idea conflicts with our experience. It does not necessarily tell us that the idea is wrong. Perhaps the deepest question is not whether the universe flows through time. Perhaps it is why creatures like us experience a static space-time structure as a flowing life. Why does consciousness seem to travel? Why is there a sequence? Why does anticipation feel different from memory? Why does the future feel open? Why does the past feel closed? These questions lie at the border between physics, philosophy, neuroscience, and the study of consciousness. We do not yet have a complete answer, and that may be the most interesting part of the block universe. It does not solve the mystery of time. It rearranges the mystery. Instead of asking, what is pushing time forward? We ask, why does a universe that may not contain an objective flow of time produce beings who experience flow so vividly? Instead of asking, where did the past go? We ask, was it ever gone in the first place? Instead of asking, when does the future come into existence? We ask, does existence itself require becoming? The block universe challenges one of the most intimate assumptions we have. That reality is constantly disappearing behind us and being created in front of us. Maybe that is true, but relativity gives us another possibility. Past, present, and future may be woven together into a single structure. Every star that is burned, every planet that will form, every moment you have forgotten, every moment you have not yet experienced, different locations in space-time, different pages in one enormous book, and from where you stand, one page is open, this one. Now. Perhaps eternity, if such a word belongs anywhere in physics, does not mean an endless sequence of moments stretching forever into the future. Perhaps it means something closer to the totality of space-time itself. Not a universe constantly arriving, a universe existing. And inside that structure are creatures like us, moving along our world lines, carrying memories of one direction and expectations of another. We call one side the past. We call the other the future, and the point from which we look at both of them we call now. But if the block universe is right, now may not be the moment the universe is creating. It may simply be where we are.
Interesting. So, of course, I had AI to write that for me, and I ran it through 11 labs to have the voice for it while I was practicing driving, because in general, a lot of times when I was driving on a truck, I listen to podcasts and I like to learn things. And I was actually going to do something like a reaction video where I found another video on the topic, because there's been plenty of them that I've seen lately about the block universe. But I didn't really want to run into any copyright issues, so I just made my own little voice documentary to listen to while I practiced on this track. So there you go, the block universe. It's not a new concept. I think it's gaining a lot of popularity lately. And it has to do with the simultaneity of now. There's no universal now between everybody, which is a weird concept. Because that seems to indicate that the past and the future do exist. Because your now and my now might not necessarily agree with each other. As far as physics is concerned, you look into something like the what's it called? The Andromeda paradox. I think it's what it's called. You know, it can be off by days. If two people on Earth are walking past each other in different directions, their slices of what they call now is different. And if they were describing something going on in the Andromeda galaxy, and the reason why they picked such a far point for this hypothetical is that it compounds so much over distance that the different times would be by days apart. And so it's a really weird concept, but I mean, just the physics is there, so. I think it points to the idea that there's more turtles. You know, like the saying, there's turtles all the way down. So I can tell you kind of where that originated from, but everywhere we look, things become abstract. If we're looking on the biggest scale of the universe, things get kind of blurry. James Webb starts finding weird things in the edges. You do the math to look down past subatomic levels, you get the Planck scale, and things start to fall apart and not make sense anymore. And even with our vision and the things that we can see, and I mean, I would say now we're having problems with now, but that's been around since before Einstein, so it's not new. It's just there's more information. The idea is spreading more lately. In any case, I find it fascinating that there's just so many things that we fundamentally don't understand about existence. Things that seem real to us that we just don't have any definitive answer for. We can't really wrap our heads around it. It's just things that are beyond our comprehension. And we've had our brightest minds on these things for generations, and it still escapes us. A lot of it just defies logic. Like why I can't get the silver medal. But anyway, so that's the block universe. Hope you liked it. See you later.